طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. جزاكم الله خيرا for joining us on time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless every single one of you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to benefit from this knowledge, and may Allah make it a means for us attaining Jannah al-Firdaus al-A'la. With that said, inshallah, we're going to go straight into our reading. Last time that we were together, we went over the Sunan of Wudu. Sunan are acts that are really here. Instead of sunan, what we want it to be is mustahab. Acts that are beloved for a person to do, meaning if they do it, they're going to be rewarded. If they leave it, they're not going to be held responsible for it. But we should try to add these things into our wudu for the perfection of it. This is what is required for the perfection of a person's wudu. Not just sticking to the fara'id, but actually going and doing what is considered the mustahab acts. We are going to just begin with them and actually go through them again. Bismillah. Read the whole thing for us. And we'll go quickly. أيوة.
وسننه 10 أشياء: التسمية، وغسل الكفين قبل إدخالهما الإناء، والمضمضة والاستنشاق، ومسح جميع الرأس، ومسح الأذنين ظاهرهما وباطنهما بماء جديد، وتخليل اللحية الكثة، وتخليل أصابع اليدين والرجلين، وتقديم اليمنى على اليسرى، والطهارة ثلاثا والموالاة.
So he says, when it comes to the sunnah of wudu, there are 10 things. We'll add a couple more, but generally there are 10 things that we need to be aware of. The first one, it is at-tasmiyah. And at-tasmiyah is saying the basmalah, bismillah. And this is an advice that we have been given by our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that when we begin certain actions, we begin with the basmalah. And also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He begins His book, the Quran, with the basmalah. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would begin certain actions with the basmalah, and it is recommended that we begin our wudu with the tasmiyah. So with mentioning the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then after that, it is the washing of the two hands before you enter them into the al-ina, into the water container. For us, it just means that we are going to wash our hands before we begin wudu. So we watch the 3 times washing of our hands needs to be done before we go straight into the face. Then after that, he says, وَالْمَضْمَضَةُ al-madmada, it is the rinsing of the mouth. That a person should rinse their mouth 3 times. Al-istinshaqu, that a person should rinse their nose 3 times. We already went over these 2. And then after that, وَمَسْحُ جَمِيعُ الرَّأْسِ, that a person is going to wipe or do mash over the entire head. In the fara'id, in the obligatory acts of wudu, we said ba'd al-ras, not the entire head, but just a portion of the head. So one hair strand or a few hair strands would be enough. But what is mustahab is that a person goes the entire head, so from the beginning until the end. Then after that, وَمَسْحُ الْأُذُنَيْنِ, that it is the wiping of the ear. ظَاهِرِهِمَا وَبَاطِنِهِمَا. So the inside of it needs to be wiped, and also the outside needs to be wiped. So right after you wipe the head, you will go straight to the ear of here and then here. And then again he says, وَتَخْلِيلُ اللِّحْيَةُ الْكَثَّةِ. For those of you that have thick beards, actually taking your fingers and massaging through it. So massaging the beard when you are making wudu, if the beard is thick. If it's not, you just wash it as part of the face. Then he says, وَتَخْلِيلُ الْأَصَابِعِ الْيَدَيْنِ وَالرِّجْلَيْنِ. Then comes the spaces in between the fingers. So here, like these spaces, you should also massage those places or wipe those places. So when you're washing your hands, like there should be times where it's like this, right? There should be times like this, the outer parts, the inner part, and then the fingers, in between the fingers. And also the feet. So the toes need to be washed in between. And this is from the sunnah. We said before that what is obligatory is the washing of the feet. But generally people, when they wash the feet, they wouldn't go in between the the toes. From the mustahab acts of wudu is that you go and you begin washing in between both of your toes, and it should be done with the pinky. Then any questions up to here, up to these sunnah. We do them enough, huh?
So when it says the ears with new water,
Uh-huh. So
with
we
the water.
so take the water. For the masih, you do one water. Then you would take one and then go again, same amount of water for your ear with a new hand. Yes.
You mentioned that there was 10.
Huh?
You mentioned that there were 10.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
what the nose?
So we mentioned the node, al-istinshaq.
Oh,
There's 10. So far, we've only mentioned 7.
7? Wait, so the basmala?
1,
And then washing of hands.
Yeah, we didn't
before
mention the nose.
2,
rinsing mouth 3
3,
times. Rinsing nose 3 times.
3,
They're both under
4.
the nose.
Oh, they're both under the same thing, or that's
والمضمضة والاستنشاق is generally one thing.
okay.
And then ومسح الرأس ومسح الأذنين. So that's with 4, 5. Then 6, the beard. 7, the toes and
So
toes and fingers. Yeah.
Okay.
So we mentioned 7. There are 3 left. 3 of them that are left. وتقديم اليمنى على اليسرى. It is beginning with or giving preference to the right side before the left side. And what this means is you wash your right arm before your left arm. You wash your right leg before the left leg. Then after that, والطهارة ثلاثة ثلاثة. Tahara is performed 3 by 3s. Here, in the Shafi'i madhab, this is not actually a sunnah. The washing 3. This is actually part of the fard of wudu. That you have to do it 3 times. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have a hadith that talk about him washing it 1 time, washing it 2 times, washing it 3 times. If you look into the books of usul of the Shafi'iyya, this would be something that is Allah has made special only for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not for everybody. But the other madhab, and also here Qadi Abu Shuja', he says washing it 3 times is the sunnah. So meaning washing it 1 time, 2 times will still make it valid. But we want our wudu's to be of 3s. Our wudu's to be of 3. Al-muwala is that the steps that have been mentioned, they have to be performed consecutively. So they have to go one after the other. Now you bring the fara'id, the obligation or the obligatory acts of wudu, and the sunnans have their places in them. So you have to do them consecutively. So there cannot be the skipping of one or the other on purpose. If it is on purpose, not allowed. If it's not allowed, then this is the breaking of wudu. If a person begins with the washing of the arms on purpose, they have not began washing or making wudu.
Oh, so you said that that's the one before this was preferring the right side over left, and then for washing 3 times, is it? I mean,
Oh, it's 3 years. So all of it 3 times.
so including like your ears, like because
So not only that one. That's the only one that's the wiping. The head and the ear we only do it 1 time.
Okay.
The other parts of it we do it 3 times.
You said something about the three times being part.
Yeah.
I didn't get that part. When you said it was sunnah and then fard and sunnah.
So here we're reading it as it being part of the sunnah. In the Shafi'i madhab, it is actually you're not allowed to do it only like you're not allowed to do it less than 3 times, right? But if instances come and the other madhabs allow the 1, the 2s, and the 3s. Sarwad.
Is there exceptions for travel or little amount of water?
In the madhab,
Yeah.
no exceptions. So the amount of water you need to make wudu is enough to do 3 of every part, right? This is again here. Qadi Abu Shuja', as he'll do with some of the other things, he goes against the madhab in certain aspects. And again, that's the book we decided to study. So those like we pointing him out in that way. But for us, we'll go with this. Like we'll go 3 times is sunnah. Right? Less than 3 times, if you are like a true Shafi'i, and you can't pray salah. That's what it means. Ah,
So, like, as long as your intention is not to purposely not do the food, and if you're doing it based on the sunnah, then it's okay.
like the 3?
Yeah.
Yes. Like I think your question is if someone is doing only one time each body part, or like and not on purpose, thinking that it's allowed, then you would be excused from it. But now, if we know, okay, like let's say we actually told to ourselves, we're all going to become Shafi'is, and not like not the wishy-washy stuff we have today, but like this is actually the way to do it. That we become Shafi'is. Then we go and we make wudu one time with wash the hands or the face one time, the legs one time. We have to be like, okay, not wudu, right? So we, inshallah, one day we'll get there.
You said at least 3 times, and you do one.
Not at least, only 3 times.
Only.
So in all the madhabs, going over 3 times is an act that is disliked. And because the Prophet ﷺ never went 3 times, and the general ruling of wudu is that we don't waste water. Right? Like we try to avoid the wasting of water while we're making wudu. So going over this limit of what we have been given, it is an act that is disliked, that should be avoided. Right? The Prophet ﷺ said, even if you have a stream of water, don't waste it. And that's not something you actually own, right? This is something that Allah has provided where it just continues to flow. But we have to be mindful of how we do it, and so they usually cap it at 3. It has to be at 3 times. Huh?
2 questions. One of them, when you do the head and the ears, you do it in one motion, or can you do it in 2 motions?
So there are some that say you do it in one motion. For us, it wouldn't be one motion.
One motion.
For us, it's not one motion. It would be
So it's
2
2
motion.
separate motions.
Yeah. So the motion of the head, and then getting new water for the ear.
Okay. But these, okay, because you said there was 10 things. So you combine those 2.
Yes.
I only have 9.
Yeah, that's okay. Because then it's 11 if we separate
Well, if we're separating what?
the ears and the head. As if we're doing it in 2 separate motions.
Let's count.
Yeah, so
That's
this one.
1,
And then washing of hands before beginning.
2,
Rinsing of mouth and nose is 3.
3,
Wiping head.
4.
Wait, sorry, let me know.
It's the shaft is one
So you
thing.
do it in one time?
Hopefully. So you take enough water. When you do this part, you take water, you go like that, and then blow it out.
Oh, that's rough.
Yes, it's so we have people that go. So again, like I told you guys,
Wishy-washy something.
yes, wishy-washy ibadat. That's what it is. So there are people that do it 6 times, 3 for the nose, 3 for here.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time.
Most of the people.
Most of the people, when I go to masjid, this is what I see. I see that, and then the nose. But you're supposed to fill this hand. Then go take some to rinse your mouth. You're not supposed to make a pool inside of your mouth, right? Then go and put it in your nose. Then from there, take it out.
And you do that 3 times?
Yes.
So you're doing like mouth, nose, mouth, nose, mouth, nose.
Yes.
Doesn't matter which, like, do you spit the water out and then blow your nose, or it doesn't matter?
So then this is what I'll go.
Okay, so nose first, then mouth.
The bottom to top, top to bottom.
There you go.
It's the other way wrong.
You could do the other way,
Okay.
but not for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question. So obviously, I think one of the conditions of wudu is you have to do it, as you mentioned.
Mhm.
But that also, I think,
Not quickly.
correctly.
Not waste
also,
water.
Like, don't waste water. What I'm trying to say. Does that also mean, like, let's say, for example, you do everything but your legs, and then you like dry off, and then you go do your legs, all like in one motion. Like, let's say, like, you're at the sink and then like the bathtub, right?
What did we say about this last time?
No. They should
If you dry off, it's finished.
Okay.
If you dry off, you have to start over. So you have to ensure not all of the parts of wudu that were made wet dry before you continue to the next one. So they have to be like, if you dry off and then you go wash your legs, you took a nice shower without washing the rest of your body. That's what it is, yeah.
Wait, I don't think we got to the numbers, sorry.
Okay, numbers.
Yeah, so
So let's start. Let's count.
Now
Let's
it makes
count.
sense. Now that you're combining those 2, that makes sense now.
Yeah.
Okay, so one is basmala,
Yeah.
two is washing hands before.
Mm-hmm.
Three,
Well,
sorry,
three is
mouth and nose is 3,
Mhm.
and then
wiping the head.
head is 4, ear is 5,
5,
and then massaging beard is 6.
6,
Space in between fingers and toes is 7.
7,
Preferring right side over left side is 8.
8,
And washing each 3 times 9.
9.
9. What's that?
الموالاة.
Al-muwala,
What's that?
consecutively.
Okay.
One after the other.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's consecutively or one after the other. But like a following needs to be the here it means like
Order?
this.
Yeah.
So here it's tartib is different where like you have to go from one step to the next to the thing. Here it's like you do these it has to go like this back to back.
Order and consecutive.
Order and consecutively.
Yeah.
Right? So you go like this. The way that he's mentioned it is what we want to do. There's 10 here. We said we'll mention
2 more.
2 more.
Mm.
This
If we have time towards the end, maybe you could tell us some hacks when you're taking the shower and then you just go and say.
actually we'll talk about that today.
Okay.
That'll be good. So we said we'll mention 12. We'll mention 11 instead. You finished all of this. You've done all of these steps. What is another act that is mustahab that you should do right after this?
دعاء.
Dua. Dua.
Let's say so.
Siwak is before. So siwak is the beginning of wudu. Now you said this, you say the dua. What is the dua you say?
اللهم اجعلنا متوابين اللهم
So is that when you finish the bathroom,
when you go out.
or when you leave your bathroom, or when you finish wudu?
Leave the bathroom.
So what do you say when you finish wudu?
Shahada.
Shahada.
Because whoever says the shahada
After wudu.
can go into any door of paradise.
Allahu Akbar.
Inside
After
the
wudu. And alhamdulillah, I don't think our wudu stations are inside the bathrooms.
But in our,
You
in
may
our
not have
homes.
it in your house.
Walk outside the
home-
طيب.
But also, there's actually difference of opinion on like what is considered a washroom these days.
So-
because that's a bigger discussion.
No, actually, I used to think that. So I did some research into it, and it became very simple. We refer to things by their names. So the rulings take that of the name. It doesn't take the ruling of what it actually is. So before I used to think you have the actual toilet, which is the place of the bathroom or the place that you would relieve yourself. Then you have the sink and so on. So are these two different places? Generally, they used to be different places, but today we refer to these places as this is the bathroom, and the bathroom, like meaning this is where you relieve yourself. Because of that, the ruling is the entire place is like a place of,
Relieving yourself.
and because of that, we can't say the thing until we step out. Right?
So after relieving the bathroom.
After, as soon as we walk out.
So just build a wall between your toilet and your
Oh,
shower.
some of them have it. And then actually, since our brother Abdullah mentioned, we'll mention number 12. Number 12 of wudu. From the sunnah of wudu is 2 rak'ah sunnah after wudu. This was the advice that was given to us by Bilal radiallahu anhu from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the reason why he earned Jannah was because every time he would make wudu, he would go and pray 2 rak'ah sunnah. So it is a mustahab act of wudu. If you are able to, every time you make it, you pray 2 rak'ah sunnah. This would cause us to actually be more aware in the ibadahs that we do. Can you imagine every time you make wudu, you're not just making it with the intentions of now I'm impure, I have to get ready for wudu, but I am actually going to pray sunnah, then I'm going to pray the actual salah of dhuhr. Your salah is going to get much better. Just like wudu, the reason why we do these things, the more we do what we have talked about from the sunnah, the more fruitful your wudu becomes.
The sunnah that's prayed after finishing your wudu, is that separate from the sunnah qabliyah?
I like this question.
You can combine.
There you go. You can combine the intentions for both. Just like if a person, somehow you're at the masjid, you went and you made wudu. You made wudu. The moment you make wudu at the masjid, you go out, adhan has been made. This is also you first walking into the masjid. you could pray, we'll say dhuhr, right? Because dhuhr has a sunnah before. You can pray this 2 rak'ahs, and it will be tahiyyat al-masjid. It will also be
between the
between adhan and iqamah. And it will also be the sunnah of dhuhr. And it will also be the sunnah of dhuhr.
So I have a question about the sunnah of wudu.
Uh,
If because the after wudu it's 2 rak'ahs,
Mhm.
but many of us pray 4 rak'ahs before the wudu.
So you hit the 2 and then 2, unless you pray 4 rak'ahs one time.
Yeah, you can't do that.
You pray 4 rak'ahs one time.
They're the only twos.
So like 4 rak'ahs, as in like, so one takbir, one salam for 4 rak'ahs
Yeah.
before dhuhr.
Actually, good.
Yeah, two shahad. Khalas, then you have all those 4, inshallah.
Wait, so you don't have to break. You can get all of those.
All of them together. So sunnah, any act of sunnah can have multiple intentions. Multiple intentions. The acts of faraid cannot have multiple intentions. Right?
The 2 rak'ahs here, did this also apply, or they also send up for after also?
Yes. Even after sunnah, even after any type of purification, 2 rak'ah sunnah. Right? And this is also a way for a person to be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for having these things that have been put in place for them to purify themselves in these matters. طيب?
Sorry, just to confirm, you could pray sunnah 4 at once.
Yeah, you can.
Like the
Like dhuhr salah.
What I understand is always just twos.
So that is the recommendation of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But sometimes I think back in my Taraweeh leading days, I used to come late to Isha. So I would pray the first 4 rak'ahs together. And that would be my Isha, but the Hiba would be Taraweeh. You know? So with the reading Allah too. Straight, yeah. Alhamdulillah.
the first book.
Huh?
Like
So Taraweeh is 2-2.
yes.
Right? So I would come late for Isha, so I missed Isha.
Yeah.
But now it's time for Taraweeh.
Okay.
So I would go and I would lead my Isha. So it would be 4 rak'ahs.
Wait, you'd lead?
Yeah, so I'll read 4 rak'ahs of salah.
And for them, we just count as their 4 separate salah with
Yeah.
a break in between.
Yeah.
I'm all confused.
So then the Bosnians,
None of it.
Bosnians fine then.
No, they're here and there is fine. And that was the Prophet said, make the sunnah mathna. Make them 2-2. طيب, any other questions up to the wudu here? خلاص. Next part.
فصل والاستنجاء واجب من البول والغائط.
طيب, yeah. فصل, new category we're going to talk about now. New sub-chapter. Al-istinja. Al-istinja is the removing of impurities from the person's private parts, the front and the back. Removing it, this is istinja. And he says, Al-istinja wajib min al-bawli wal-gha'id. From urinating and relieving oneself, it is wajib for you to perform al-istinja. He's going to tell us how it is performed in different ways. Read to the bottom until it goes nawaqid al-wudu.
والأفضل أن يستنجي بالأحجار ثم يتبعها بالماء ويجوز أن يقتصر على الماء أو على 3 أحجار ينقي بهن المحل فإن أراد الاقتصار على أحدهما فالماء أفضل ويجتنب استقبال القبلة واستدبارها في الصحراء ويجتنب البول والغائط في الماء الراكد وتحت الشجرة المثمرة وفي الطريق والظل والثقب ولا يتكلم على البول والغائط ولا يستقبل الشمس ولا القمر ولا يستدبره.
Okay, طيب. So he says, when it comes to, 1 second, al-istinja. He says when it comes to al-istinja is that a person, 1 second. Okay, خلاص. We have some technical difficulties. Move on from there. So al-istinja wajib. We know that removing oneself, it is an act that is wajib. Here it means if you don't do this, your wudu is not valid. Wudu, this comes before a person makes wudu. The only reason it's placed after It's because these things could happen when you are not intending to make wudu. So to not confuse us and to make us think that every time I make wudu, there has to be purification of from from using the bathroom. It's this applies in every single moment, but in the beginning of wudu also. So this is actually the preconditions, the prerequisites of wudu is that a person does istinja if they use the bathroom. So from urinating and from bowels, a person has to clean himself. So how do you do it? He said, "Well, afdalu." What is preferred? What is the preferred method? Is that a person does it bil ahjari, that he does it with stones first. ثم يتبعها بالماء, then he follows it up with water. Now, alhamdulillah, we don't use stones today. We don't use stones. But if we were to use stones, it would be 3 separate stones that would need to be used. And then you would use it to, and this is more for bowels instead of for urination. Urination has a different method of cleaning oneself. So you would remove what is apparent. Then from there, you would use water to clean what might not be apparent, but it is still from the najasat. These 2 things, like we mentioned before, they are from the impurities that come from a person. So you do it, and then you would follow it up with the water. For us today, we could separate, we could move away from the water, from the stone, to toilet paper. Can we actually do that?
Can you not do it like
Huh? So here, this is the interesting part. The Prophet ﷺ was very strict in what he would use to purify himself. And the way that we know is because he would tell the companions to bring it before he would go relieve himself. In our madhab, using toilet paper, using toilet paper cannot take place of the rock. Because where does toilet paper come from? From tree. So like the actual wood of the tree, right? Not the leaves. So if it comes from the actual wood of the trees, we have to prove that the Prophet ﷺ used any part of the tree to purify himself. And if not, because trees were also available then, if not, are you able to use it? So here, but the paper doesn't come from the leaves. It comes from the actual like wood, the bark or the whole thing. But another form now it goes to the leaf.
isn't it like they didn't have that process back then? So like maybe it just wasn't economical to like take the bark and then like use it one time.
So not even the bark, right? Like trees when they begin, like when they get much older and they begin to shed, like you could take a portion of the bark, not a big portion, like a small portion. It's very easy for it to come off. How come those weren't used? Would be the would be the thing.
Did they have a lot of those trees?
I don't think so. That's another thing, right? Did they have a lot of those trees? But palm trees and palm trees
Are rough,
very rough and they live forever. Huh? Now, so here comes the madhab. You cannot take the place of thing. You cannot let it take the place. But just as a recommendation, it is better for you to use paper towel, not with the intentions that this is going to remove the najasa, but just to make it easier for you to purify yourself with water next. And the way that we get to that, he says, وَيَجُوزُ, it is allowed for you to just do it instead of both. What afdalu is both of them. The better one, it is both. But you are allowed to either do it with just water. ويقتصر على الماء. You just use only water. أو على 3 أحجار. Or 3 stones that would be able to remove that najasa. But even though both are allowed, فإذا أراد الاختصار, if you are actually going to cut it short, if you're going to make it lower, then what you should do على أحدهما, like on one of them, you're going to replace one of them, فالماء أفضل. Then actually using water is more pure, or is more virtuous, is better. Yes.
I think you might have answered my question, but I was going to ask if You can, if it's permissible to do the other way around, where you use water for what's apparent, and then like a toilet paper for what's not apparent, just to make sure in case you need to use more water.
So the water can, the way, the reason you would do it in the other way, like
Just try it.
the so the drying off is a different thing. So if you want to dry off, then this is now like you're not in istinja anymore. Istinja is the removal of what is najis. And using, for example, paper towel, what it would do, it would just make it easier for you to know I have purified, really, I've purified myself.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't be enough. For example, like let's say you are at a public restroom, you didn't take water, and you only used
Yeah.
toilet paper. Has the najasa been lifted to the point
No.
where you could go now make wudu and pray? There you go. So always carry your water bottles with you.
What if you use like wet toilet paper or like wet
Allah.
napkins?
So how about we go not wet napkins? We go to what do we use to purify our children?
Wipes, yeah.
Wipes. Is that allowed to remove? So this is what we want to understand. All of these things clean. All of these things clean a person, right? But which one of them remove najasa to where you could do it? Only these two things. Using wipes, yes, it cleans yourself. Yes, it cleans our children.
Your children are praying anyway. So.
But I'm saying, but if we use those, would we be able to now make wudu? No, because the najasa has that, like the filth in our language has been removed, but the najasa itself, the impurity itself, has not been removed yet. And the only way to remove those is by using these methods. Is that clear? So even if it's wet, it wouldn't suffice that now I can go and make wudu and go. طيب? Here is this what we've been talking about so far. Do we use it for at both for urination? No. Right? Do we use it for when we urinate? This is how we purify ourselves. For urination, even though it's not mentioned here, just for our benefit. And more so for the brother's benefit. Use water. Right? Use water. But there's another step after that we need to be aware of when we are cleaning ourselves. And that is the practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to where like you need to empty any urination or part of it that could have remained inside. So what you would have to do is after you urinated, you finished, there has to be like a massaging type where you bring out 3 times. So it has to be done 3 times. Do you understand? You go from the end and pull whatever could be out. And then after that, use your water. So you know I've done the 3 times of letting what might have left be behind. And this happens, right? This happens, for example, like subhanallah, alhamdulillah for Islam again. You'd have like people that would use the bathroom, that are non-Muslims, and they will come out smelling like they use the bathroom on themselves. And what ends up happening is there's that emotion, like the initial stream of I need to relieve myself, but then there's like the last droppings that remain inside that don't come out. So then they would put on their pants and they would come out, and then those droppings are coming as they're walking. So it would be the end of urination would be coming out. And one of the things that the Prophet ﷺ told us is, my ummah, my ummah will be punished when he was talking about the 2 graves, because like paraphrasing here, the recklessness that they have when it comes to urination, that you don't pay attention to it, how like what it is doing to you. So you're fine with just you've cleaned yourself, but there's still some that are left now that get on your clothes. Now your clothes has become what? Najis. If it becomes najis, now you cannot pray in these clothes. So like these are things that we have to be aware of. Or sometimes people would go to places where they urinate standing, and there might be some like some of it gets back on you. Here, now your clothes has become what? Najis. The salah that you pray. And here it doesn't matter whether you knew it happened or not, right? Like if I thought it didn't happen, if I thought it didn't happen, but I'm in a situation where like I can see the things jumping and I can kind of look at myself and be like, oh, none of it got on me. Then it becomes okay. You're actually in clothing that is najis, right? And when I was in Seattle, there was a study done by some of the imams to compare what happens between like the urinal and the regular toilet when somebody stands and urinates. So what they did was like they put paper towels here and they would begin urinating. And what they found is that if you use like the regular bathroom, a lot of it gets back on the person. But you don't see it because it's very little. But on the paper, because the paper once a tiny bit of water touches it, what happens? It changes color. And it goes from being this white into okay, this is the gray spot, gray spot, gray spot, gray spot. Right? Then they went and they used the urinal. Actually, worse was like the actual toilet. And we think like, the urinal is actually worse, right? But you should also try this. But we have to be careful of these things because they impact what happens to us when we go and we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala right after that.
What's the solution to that in public bathroom?
Isn't the Prophet also used to
Slow the urination.
throw water on his clothes like before after istinja or
Mhm.
that, right?
So like places that it might get to.
Yeah, so
But how do we do that?
like this.
We don't know how much water we would use to be able to come out. Now we have all this, but here and then there.
Actually, so I have a question or comment. So let's say you're urinating and then you get a little bit on your clothes. Let's say you actually see like a drop.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just put water on it?
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah. So you just wash that part with water.
And then the second question, and maybe you can confirm. I mean, it's more of a comment, but I heard that like the Sahaba, whenever they would use the washroom, is they would just sprinkle some water in like their underwear, and then like
So that's what
after-
you say.
well, he was saying you just all over your
Bring the
clothes.
water.
Oh,
Like places where you might think it comes to.
well, I'm specifically like where you are, like in your hands, like.
You try one of those. Yeah. But alhamdulillah, inshallah, we urinate
Have a change of clothes after.
Allah Akbar.
Subhanallah.
Sahad.
What if you're changing tile and
So a child is when does it become impurities? When does like what comes from them become impurities? Huh?
Start eating meat.
There we go. That's the easiest one to take. If they consume meat, or if they have the ability to consume meat, then that means from that time, like whatever comes from them, it becomes najis.
okay?
So before that, like if you're changing them, and you guys have again, no comments today.
It's a vegetarian.
So let's say you have a son. Most likely, they're not like there'll be moments where they'll urinate on you. So now is that najis or is it not najis? If they are in that stage of like they're not eating meat, it wouldn't be najis. But you should still go and uh, purify this, right? You should still go wash it or change your clothes much better. But it wouldn't be. So theirs wouldn't be najasa until that point. And that point we would say is usually around the second year, right? Is that when kids start eating meat? Around the second year.
Second year? That's pretty early.
No, I mean like when do these teeth come in?
Okay.
Oh no.
8-9 months you'll probably be.
Yes, I know.
This is Egyptian food.
This Egyptian. So that around that time, huh?
No, so say I'm taking my 3-year-old to the bathroom
Mhm.
and I wipe her.
Yeah.
What do I need to do to pray?
Just wash your hands. Yeah. So you just wash your hands. This and that washing, the washing of them, unless we'll talk about the things that break the wudu, unless some of these things happen and they have to do with the touching of the private parts and stuff, then you wouldn't have to make wudu again. Does that make sense? So we'll get to them, inshallah. Salman and the
Yes, just to clarify, even like for a 4 or 5-year-old who's not potty trained yet, and you're cleaning them after they're using
Mhm.
the bathroom, if you touch the najas, even of an older child,
Mhm.
and it's only in your palm,
Yeah.
you still have wudu as long as you wash.
So Does najasa does not break a person's, like the touching of it does not break a person's wudu. So it's not from the like things that break the wudu. So if, for example, you have like again, you're wiping and you miss the wipe and it gets on your hand. It's your child, right? Or like later on, it's maybe like a family member, older family member, and so on. That touching of it, like even if it fell on you, it wouldn't. It's not one of the nullifiers of wudu. So you would have wudu. The only thing you would have to do is the removal of this thing from the hand, from the clothing, from the feet, wherever it might be. Is that clear?
So touching najasa does not make it lose your wudu.
No. Touching the najasa is not like
Unless it's your
no. If it's you produced the najis.
Yeah.
So the next thing we'll talk about is what actually breaks wudu. So that is different than, like for example, pig is najis, right? Like we know pig is najis. Does touching pig break my wudu?
Yeah.
Allahu Akbar. No.
It doesn't. Like
No.
touching a dog, you have to clean.
Touching your pig does not.
Why do you have a pig? That's the question. You said touching a pig. I said touching a pig. I almost said the pig. My ears of muscle came out. Okay. Right. So does that break wudu? Again, we'll talk about it when we get to the nullifiers of wudu. But if anything on istinja.
So two things. One is with the white. I'm not. I didn't quite follow. If there's enough water, why does it not count? Is there a specific ruling on the water has to be flowing or the amount of water? If it's a wet wipe, it seems like the water part is there.
So do we consider that water? And that's really the point of the discussion. If are we ever able to like squeeze, wipe, and produce water from it?
A few drops.
I don't know. The ones I have, I don't think I've been able to do it, right? But even those few drops, is that more than like the fabric or the type of, lack of a better term here, paper that is there? Is this something that we could call water? And if the ruling is that we're going to call it water, we're going to give it the ruling of water. The first lesson that we had were on what? On types of water. Not types of water actually. The types of water was like the sky water, those. Then the next thing that we talked about was what? Seven, like the categories of water. And water that is mixed with another item. Water that is mixed with another object. Whether it is the like uh, fruits, like rose water and things like that, or like other things. That water that comes from it is pure, but does it purify? So we go back to that and we're like, okay, it doesn't fit into the category of what type of water that purifies, even if it gets those 1, 2, 3 drops, or even if it gets more than that. But this addition of it now turns it into a water that is makruhun isti'malu, right? It is this. It's not. You should not use it to purify.
And the stones and the water, it applies to urination as well.
So not the stone, but the water. The water applies. You should use water to purify yourself. But the step before that is what we should take.
What should you do in a situation where you don't have water accessible? You can't drink it or hygiene.
For urination,
For either one.
for either one, I have no idea. But for urination, then you would try to follow the trying to squeeze all of it out, and then maybe finding a rock that could dry off, the end of it. So you're like, okay, خلاص, I've only removed it, and what you like, there's usually a little bit still left on like the place that it comes out from. So then you at that time like, see the rock, let me grab it and go over it. Let me try to dry it here. For the back, if you already know that there's no water, leaves us. Now that the question comes like, can I go and pray after I've cleaned myself or not? So even when we go to these places, we should ensure that we would have the things that we need to purify ourselves. طيب? Any other questions here? Ah, Bismillah.
So paper, toilet paper on its own is not enough.
right?
Yes.
Wet toilet paper with water.
Mhm. With water, meaning.
From the sink, like you let it.
So what do we think?
What was the question, sir?
Okay,
You
you
wet
take
toilet paper.
toilet paper and you make it wet.
said mixing water with something else would make it still pure but not purifying.
There we go. So it would clean us, right? And the point here is not whether this actually cleans us or not. This is whether it puts us in a place to worship Allah. That's what we're thinking. So that, yes, it's cleaning. It will clean you, but you can't use that as the removal of najasa.
Hey, this is not sound good. What do you do on the plate?
Allahu
Water
Akbar.
bottle. Water bottle.
Water bottle, huh?
Water bottle is a solution to everything.
Yeah.
Water bottle solution.
Always have a water bottle.
Always have a water bottle.
Always.
The
Oh.
sink is closed.
Huh?
The sink is closed.
How do you
The
get
sink is not closed, it's open. Oh, you said it's closed.
Yeah.
So you're gonna go from there to here like this? MashaAllah. I can't use those toilets. I just don't use it.
So I think,
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
my answer is just don't use it.
don't use it. It's always the best answer.
I think going with the question I was asked earlier with like the toilet paper and the water. So let's say you wet it, and let's say you clean yourself enough where you're clean, but you're not purified.
Mhm.
Then you could probably just take a little bit of water,
and
then
do
just
it.
wipe over it, and then now you're purified, right?
There you go. There you go. Make it easy for us. Hack, huh?
So the question was, can you use toilet paper that's wet
Uh-huh.
to to clean yourself, purify yourself?
Yeah.
The answer was no, because as we mentioned, water that's a part of something is
Yeah.
clean but doesn't purify. So you do is you just get that, you clean yourself enough where it's basically clean, but you're not purifying. You take a little bit of water from wherever, you just wipe over it, I guess, and now you're purified.
Because now you removed when you cleanse yourself, when you cleaned yourself, you removed what needs to be removed in the actual process of now washing for the purification. Is that clear? Did everybody here? طيب, let's move on let's move on quickly down. So this is just with what should be used. Now he goes into how should it be done. Meaning, so he says, ويجتنب الاستقبال القبلة واستدبارها في الصحراء. That if you are in the desert, here Sahara to us means the desert. But we are going to not just restricted to desert. If we are in an open space, if we are in like let's say we go camping, it is an open space. The thing that we should avoid, and again, this is like for us it becomes a little bit difficult. It is the facing of the Qibla or making the Qibla our backs, like turning to the Qibla. If you are ever interested and you look in some of the bathrooms that are in the masjid, in some of the masajid, you're always facing the Qibla, right? But in the madhab, this is only when you're outside. So when you are ever outside and you have to relieve yourself, avoid the Qibla being in front of you or behind you. This is clear. طيب.
So when you're relieving yourself, you don't want to be facing the Qibla or behind you.
Yeah. So let's say if the Qibla is north, even though it's northeast, let's say the Qibla is north. You don't want to face north or south. You want to face east or west. So if it's northeast, you want to avoid northeast and also turning like facing northeast and turning your back to northeast. So northeast, southeast you avoid. Southwest you avoid. So going like this you avoid this. Then you pick all of the other directions.
But at home, that's fine.
Huh?
Like if at home you're facing the Qibla while you're using
If we call that the place of relief. So this just applies to outside. Then after that, he says is that you need to stay وَيَجْتَنِبُ الْبَوْلُ وَالْغَائِطُ, relieving yourself, urinating, or relieving yourself in the other way. You need to stay away from doing it in في الماء الراكد, still water or stagnant water. Still water, stagnant water. What this means is, for example, like a lake or a pond or swimming pool.
Relieve
Okay?
yourself in those places.
Yeah. So do not relieve yourself in those places. Then after that, وتحت الشجرة المثمرة, a tree that bears fruit. So a tree that has fruits under it, you should not urinate. Why? Because people are going to come. This thing is going to drop. and you've made the place filth now. And then from there, وفي الطريق, in the path, in the passageways, in the streets, you should not relieve yourself. Then وظل, in anywhere that the people use for shade, not any shaded area, but the places that are used for shade. Again, what they used to do during the earlier years, you would have certain places that you would go to seek shade when it is too hot, and these were well-known places. Like there would be certain houses, the way that they're placed, from this time to this time, if you sit near it, you are going to be shaded. In those places, do not relieve yourself. Right? Those places, do not relieve yourself. Then the last one is do not relieve yourself in, what is the second? Holes. Holes. You should not relieve yourself in holes. What this means here,
Snakes and stuff like that.
burrows is what we're looking for here.
Oh, I was gonna say like don't dig a spot and then just
No, so this is not, you shouldn't dig a spot when you use it. But let's say you see that there's, there are some animals, especially in the desert, that have, they live under. So what it is they like, you can see the entrance. You can see where it is dug or where the animal would enter into. Or, for example, an ant hill. The ant hill usually would have like a hole at the top, the opening of it. These type of places you should not urinate in.
That's dangerous for us.
That's very dangerous for us.
Yeah.
Very, very dangerous. It might be the lizard that is in there.
Snake.
There might be a snake in there. All of these things are.
do you get sins for this?
So if you do any of these, especially in the road, in the shade, under the tree, in water that is stagnant, you'd be sinning. You'd be sinning for relieving yourself in it. Because they come from Prophet ﷺ telling you, do not. All of these have a hadith that tell you, do not do this. Do not relieve yourself on the road. Do not relieve yourself in the shade. Do not relieve yourself under the tree. And the tree is the one that is giving food.
Does this also apply to like if you have animals and they like take them to relieve themselves in those places?
I actually have no idea.
Because like
Alhamdulillah, we
like
don't-
isn't like the stuff that we use for
fertilizer.
fertilizers all like just most of it is like poop and stuff.
So I think like they poop in their places and then we gather this, right?
Yeah.
Or we
Cats
go.
be green,
No, he's talking about that, like the
I
other,
thought
like
manure.
manure, like cows and
Ah.
those other type of animals. I don't know. Do they ever cross into these places that we should not use to use?
But my follow-up question was, isn't also our manure also nutritious for the trees and stuff? Or
No, you can, no. The Prophet ﷺ taught us to not relieve ourselves under trees. And this what they said was this is meant as not just any tree, right? This would actually be a tree that bears fruit, because the people would go, like the thing drops, and when the fruit drops, they generally used to pick it up as harvest, and they would eat. So if you relieve yourself under this tree, you are
destroying someone's life.
property.
Is believing yourself in a bottle considered a hole?
No. So this is like an actual hole in the ground, like an actual, and it was dug for a purpose. Whether it's by, like, let's say for some reason, we decided to dig holes, or let's say one of those animals that dig holes began, like, this is where it's living, right? Like lizards, they live in a hole. Snakes in the desert, they live in a hole. What's those meerkats, rattlesnakes that we saw in the hike?
Like gophers and stuff.
Go for all of these things. You should avoid in. So instead of saying hole, we're going to say, what do you call those? Burrows. Those are called burrows. Right? So the den or their den, underground den. That should be avoided. Let's finish on these was times running out. Then he says, do not speak. Do not talk while you are urinating or relieving yourself on the phone. And then even here we'll say don't text also. So this is to us, this is also a form of speech. Don't write, don't do nothing while you're relieving it. One time, the Prophet ﷺ was relieving himself. Somebody passed by and started talking, and he ignored them. From there, we learned we should not be talking while we use the bathroom. I have went into the masjid bathroom, and I hear people having
Bro, it's the most
conversations.
uncomfortable feeling ever.
I'm like, what am I supposed to do?
I have a question. So if you text or use your phone while you relieve yourself, do you get sins for it?
For talking, yes. For talking, texting, yes.
So if you text someone,
Yeah, that is a form of speech for us.
I see.
How about this solution? Big solution. How do we avoid all of this?
Leave the phone outside.
Leave the phone outside.
Mashallah, the washroom time will be very quick.
Yeah, significant. That's not how it is.
Yeah. No 45-minute break for you guys. Huh?
What if you need to communicate to get something between yourself? Like,
So you just say
necessity.
yeah, first, yeah, but if it happens, right, you just tell them
necessity.
this is a necessity that needs to be fulfilled. So that is one rule. The next rule, he says, do not face the sun or the moon, and don't turn your backs to them. This makes it
Very hard.
very hard.
Difficult.
Because if you think about it, look, like let's think about it here.
You're building a house. You
Uh-huh.
have to make sure the bathroom is done in
Just
a way
rotate it.
No, just keep going until it's like no. This is again. This is going to be restricted to the outside of not fake. Because if you think about it, the sun rises from where?
East.
And where does it set? West. So at any moment, facing the east or west, like you cannot use the bathroom. Because if you face east and the sun is on the other side, your back is to it. If you face west when it's rising, your back is to it. So you have this. Then we go back a few passages where he says, don't face the Qibla. The Qibla is not towards the sun. The Qibla is not towards the moon. The Qibla, again, we said northeast. So you can't face east. You can't face west. You can't face northeast. You can't face southwest. Where are you going to face?
Wait until noon and then.
Just hold it in.
MashaAllah, that's all we have to do. Huh?
But like,
Don't go camping at this point.
like
No camping, no outside activities, huh?
actually, the honest serious sound like, what are you supposed to do?
No, so again, these here, this is like a recommendation.
Okay.
That when you do it, you shouldn't do it. But and then again, like when we're taking usul fiqh, like this for us, the qibla is very far. All right, it's like we're not close. Like, what are we passing through to get to the qibla? We're all the way on this side. When this was written, and for the people that were like, they knew the direction of the qibla, and majority of the time, there's nothing between them and the Kaaba. There'd be like nothing, just straight desert. Boom, the Kaaba's there. So in those, like, yeah, don't turn your ways to them. Don't turn your backs to them. Look into the other ways. Right? So this is a recommendation here. Not like the other things we mentioned here. Actually, to name some of them.
I guess the question was like, was this really observed in the Sunnah, and so this is where the recommendation comes from? Like they noticed it enough times, or it happened?
So there's a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ tells us, don't face the qibla and don't turn your backs to the qibla. So for that one,
I understand.
Yeah.
But about the sun
and the moon.
and the moon.
Yeah, no, this one, no, just out of respect for these things.
Okay.
Right? And I think there's like a weak hadith on this, but just leave it there. So these recommendations come from there. But for us, these are recommendations. And in the masjids that have like bathrooms that face the qibla, because this is there's a barrier between you and the qibla, which is generally that wall that is there, then it wouldn't be that I'm facing the qibla. I'm facing this wall.
Only outdoors.
Yeah, this is only like outdoors where it's open. Right, so when you go camping and things like that. طيب. Any other questions? I think that was the end of it. This is the end of istinja. I thought we would get to the nawaqid and all that today.
This is not really related to this, but when you're burying the body under the ground, the body has to face the qibla, right?
Yes. When do we touch? No, I think there's janaza and rulings of that will come towards the middle of this book, inshallah. But any other questions? When we reach the middle of idnillah, we'll reach one day.
Earlier during this class, you mentioned the 4 prayers for Sunnah. After wudu, Tahiyat al-Masjid, Sunnah al-Qabliya, and what's the 4th one?
The sunnah of the adhan and niqama.
Between adhan and iqama.
Adhan and niqama. And there are so many sunan that we should be increasing in praying.
Bilal used to pray anytime when he makes wudu.
Anytime he used to make wudu. Right. So then, except the time that it is manhiyun to pray in, prohibited for you to pray salah.
Yeah. So you can't pray after us.
No, nothing.
This one.
Oh, I don't think they. Can you guys hear me on Zoom?
No,
Okay, خلاص. جزاكم الله خيرا. To all of you, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our efforts. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us for shortcomings. صلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. جزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.